Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of our videos. Today I'm here with a select group of autistic employees at AANE and facilitators at AANE. And today we want to talk to you about some of the rhetoric that's been going on, some of the conversations that have been happening in the greater autism community, as well as the inflammatory rhetoric of RFK Jr., especially in related to his creation of an autism registry and the discussion of causes and cures for autism and things like that. And so I have a few questions I'm going to be asking the group today, and we hope that they are going to be encompassing of our feelings and our values and our community's feelings and values around this subject. It's something that we're deeply concerned with, and we hope to convey that to you today. Um, so I guess the first thing that we can do is just introduce ourselves a little bit and what we do here. So I'll do that first. My name is Ryan Walsh. I am a facilitation specialist at AANE in the Individual and Family Services Department. I've been an official employee at AANE for a little over 4.5 years, and I have been involved in autism advocacy since I was 13 years old, and I'm 26 now. So it's been a while, and that's just a little bit about me. Um, would anyone like to introduce themselves next?
I'll go. I'm Emmett Perkins. I use he, they pronouns. I am the co facilitator of our autistic gender questioning transgender group. It's awesome. Um, and I was diagnosed when I was 21, and I care very deeply about this community. These are my people, and this is an important topic to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmett. We'll go with Aaron next.
My name is Aaron Levenger. I work for AANE as a administrative coordinator in the IFS Department, Individual Family Services. I also do some facilitating, including limited trivia nights, and wear many hats at AANE. I've been involved in autism community for probably at least a decade, if not at least like age 21. I'm 36 now, 35, 36, sorry. And I am an award-winning speaker about autism awareness, among other things.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, Liv.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Olive Gallup. I go by Liv, she, they pronouns, and I am another one of our facilitation specialists here. I do many groups here, but I am very happy and proud of, particularly the queer autistic groups that I'm fortunate enough to run. I am also a published author on the topic of the intersectionality of being queer and autistic. Much like Emmett said, these are my people. I care very deeply about this subject, and yeah, I'm excited to get into the topics today for sure.
Thank you, Liv.
I can go. My name is Mina. I'm a senior manager in the Individual and Family Services Department, and I also facilitate a support group for women 35 to 50. I am late diagnosed. I've been diagnosed for about 2.5 years, and I've worked for AANE for almost exactly the same amount of time. It was a very serendipitous thing that happened. And I was so welcomed into the AANE community and the broader autistic community, and I just feel like it's such an immense privilege to share that community and welcome people into our space as well.
Thank you. Bob, you can go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Bob Waters. I use he, him pronouns. I also run support groups like some of the folks just introduced themselves. Also conduct trainings and work in A&E's case management department as well, called LifeNet. And yeah, like everyone here, I care very deeply about neurodiversity advocacy. And, there are things that are true and things that are not true. And when things that are not true are being spread everywhere, it is harmful. So glad we're able to talk about this today.
Preach, brother. Yeah.
Yes, I think that we'll be covering that at length today, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So the first question that I have for you all today is, as some of you may be aware, at the recent Senate hearing with RFK Jr., he discussed the state of the autism registry that people have been discussing, and he claimed that, you know, some people have been saying it's been walked back, some people are saying he's still doing it. What he claimed at the Senate hearing was that it was going to be a voluntary process where the government would already be in possession of some of your information if you're a diagnosed person, and that you would have to go through a process to have your information withdrawn from that registry. So the thing that I want to ask you is, what do you think is the impact of the creation of a registry like this, even if it is a so-called voluntary measure? Let's start with Liv.
Yeah, so if we were to take this statement at its most charitable, meaning that you were to have to come and tell this registry that you would like to opt out, going through bureaucracies and the telephone calling and the hoops to jump through is already difficult for a lot of autistic people. Executive functioning issues are things that we have to deal with all the time. So even if this is something that is, purely beneficial, as they say, you could still view it as a breach of privacy. This is something that not a lot of autistic people want. So even at its most charitable, it would be difficult to separate yourself from this effort that they're putting through. And many folks in the community feel that it is much less than charitable anyway, so that it's just a huge difficulty to even have to separate ourselves from this effort that they're putting forth in the first place. I'll leave it there for other folks to comment on.
Thank you. Emmett, you can go ahead.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Emmett, you can go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So if this registry goes through, we become a data point or like a blip in the numbers, and that for me does not feel good. I don't want to become a statistic. I don't want to become a number. I know that it used to be 1 in 68 was that's how many autistic children are. I know it's growing. That more people are finding themselves, and more people are finding the resources that they need to be themselves, and that's huge and that's important. And this is a breaking down. This is a medicalization of my community. This is a medicalization of my experiences, and it's something that I very much do not want. Yeah.
Mina, you can go ahead.
Like a concern that I have, especially since AANE supports families of autistic children, is that minors won't have the agency to opt out of something like this. So I think that there may be well-meaning parents who keep their kids on this registry without really understanding what the possible implications of this, like, othering of our community could be. And that is deeply concerning to me. And I do think the parents are likely well-meaning, but the fact that there are, there could be 2-year-olds added to this registry without obviously like the knowledge needed to consent to something like this is, it's really scary to me. And yeah, it's very scary to me.
Do you mind if I jump in, Ryan?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Sure. So something that comes to mind for me is that even if you have either a basic trust in, oh, it's just some giant government list that no one is going to look at, or no one cares about me enough to do that, or whatever you think. The thing that scares me is third parties who would then have access to such a list, or there would be some kind of streamlined process for them to sort of look up specific individuals. The analogy that I think of is like, let's say people out there, who have a history of being incarcerated, right? There's huge political discussion about how for many people that follows them the rest of their lives, right? So even if that's just sort of a basic government thing of like, oh, yep, you were incarcerated, here is the thing that proves that you were incarcerated. If every landlord in your state can just search you up and then deny you housing, and you can't get housing anywhere, that actively messes with your life. I'm thinking employers, healthcare providers, health insurance providers. Me personally, I'm less. I mean, many people in our community are very scared of this idea of a big government registry. It brings up scary analogies to the T4 program. I mean, that's a big jump. But for me, I think of it in terms of not necessarily what the National Institutes of Health would do, but what a tool to aid in someone's discrimination and also to take away the agency of disclosure that's so important to everyone here in our community. We always talk about how disclosure isn't inherently good or inherently bad. It is a tool that you use to gain access to situations, people, services, as you see fit, as you understand. And having that disclosure ability be taken away for a lot of folks is something that scares me.
Thanks, Bob.
I haven't talked yet, so I'll talk now. I'm somewhat related to what Bob said. All I can see at Autism Registry is one of the things because the Autism Registry is employer will like people look at the registry. Oh, it's for statistic. I'm not gonna hire them. Then that's ridiculous. I don't want to hire an autistic person. Well, autistic people already have a hard time getting a job. I know I did, and if any employer of any kind registry and say, "Oh, I can't hire this person," that's gonna make it even harder. That's all I can see in it. Again, I had a hard time getting a job.
Absolutely. I think that you all in your responses really highlighted how this is not just something that's being used as a tool for research, but what it really is a platform to aid in discrimination. It's a platform that creates a system wherein an employer or a housing provider or an insurance company or all the things that we've previously listed um, can get information about you that you're not voluntarily providing to them. And the idea that somebody could make a decision about you, a very important life decision about you, based on information that you did not voluntarily provide to them, is not something that everybody, in society at large has had to deal with. And I think that if a lot of more people had to deal with it, not just disabled people, but if more people had to deal with it, that would be something that people would be protecting as a right. Like, I should be allowed to voluntarily provide information about myself. The government should not be allowed to provide information about me without my consent. So I think that that's a very good way of illustrating that idea to everyone. So thank you for that. I do want to move into the next question at this time. And I think that this is going to be one of our more important questions, which is as employers, as employees at AANE and facilitators at AANE, we all have one-on-one or group interactions with our community and our client base. How has this conversation affected the ecosystem of your support groups and your connect calls and things like that? Because I think that, at least for me, I've noticed some pretty noticeable changes, especially in conversations around disclosure and masking and things like that. So I'm wondering if you guys could all talk about your experience and how your client interactions have changed as a result of this.
Let's start. I feel like a lot of my clients are very scared right now. They're very afraid of a loss of agency, of autonomy. They're afraid of being infantilized. They're afraid of losing opportunities now based on their diagnosis. People will not get as much help as they need now because of this. Like, it's hard for me to talk about because it's such a heavy topic, but it's not okay to have this go on, this registry. And my clients overwhelmingly support that. We talk very carefully about identity in my group. Identity is the big thing that we talk about, and a lot of these people have these marginalized identities, and they're just really, really afraid of what's going to happen, and it makes me sick to my stomach.
Thank you. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm seeing with clients is, again, on the theme of like misinformation and confusion, something I deal a lot with the clients I work with is sort of doubt about themselves, especially if they're new to a diagnosis process. Um, uh, they're like, well, that can't be me. That can't be me. And often it takes multiple conversations with clients to have them feel comfortable in a choice to either seek a diagnosis or get services or um, uh, 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 make decisions in their lives that avoid burnout, even if those decisions are like less masking heavy or like selfish or whatever. And the idea of someone, especially someone who's like brand new to our community, brand new to the language of neurodivergence, the idea of someone seeing news like this about a registry, they would immediately go, "Oh, well, like I can't do that. I can't get a diagnosis. Oh, I can't identify as that. Like that's for those people. That's for those. I'm not like those people." And that exacerbates the suffering, and it exacerbates the, like Emmett was saying, the infantilization of this idea of autism, um, the comfortable ignorance of having this like autistic character in mind of like, oh, that's what that means, but that's not me, or that's not my family member, or that's not like whatever. Um, it makes people more resistant to the idea of embracing neurodivergence and sort of this neurotypical paradigm as just inherent to all human life and all human social spaces, which is harmful. Which is harmful. It causes all of the mental health struggles that we see. It causes all of the sort of toxic self-reliance that we see with our clients. It's very frustrating.
Thank you, Bob. Liv, you can go up.
Yeah, totally. Emmett and Bob, you both covered a lot of what I was, or rather, you both covered a lot of what I'm seeing as well. One thing I did want to highlight too, though, is that a lot of the calls that I screen at our here at AANE are often from folks who are trying to access resources, and so the first part of that conversation always starts with like, I'm thinking about getting a diagnosis, so I might be able to access things like disability pay or like work accommodations and things like that. And so then the second part of that conversation is inevitably the risk reward balance of maybe getting on a list while also being able to access whatever resource they're going for there. And the fear of getting on the list is sometimes enough to deter people from seeking the diagnosis and therefore foregoing the resources that they are going after. So it is quite literally choosing, quote unquote, feeling forced to not accept an accommodation that would let an autistic person thrive a bit better, out of the sheer fear of having, at the very least, privacy breached, if not, like you all mentioned, getting reported to insurance and housing and employers and stuff like that.
Thank you. Yeah, Mina.
Yeah, I just want to echo what everyone has already said, and then also add that, like, from a later diagnosed perspective, since my group is, there are many later diagnosed women in that group, or self-diagnosed people later on that were considering getting a diagnosis and are now kind of questioning that. There are some other like sort of secondary negative emotions that I've seen are things like regret. Like a lot of people getting a diagnosis as an adult, and I'm sure as a child too, but I didn't have one, so I'm speaking from my own experience, is a really emotionally fraught situation anyway. Like, much like Bob was talking about, there's a lot of second guessing, there's a lot of self-identifying and self-identity reflection that kind of has to happen. There's often a grieving process involved. It's already this very, very emotional process. And the sort of backwards thinking that's happening in the government is now I'm seeing people regret seeking help. That may have been life-saving for people in some cases. I'm seeing people regret disclosing to therapists that they're autistic because now they've found out that their therapist has been billing under an ASD code. So now their insurance has that information, and it just sort of like spirals into these like large concerns about privacy and regret and feeling shame about choices that you've made, you know, in the past, and how that may be putting you at risk now. And it's so frustrating. Like, we've done so much work as a community to move, even, you know, like the name of the month is like, it was autism awareness, now it's acceptance. And it's so frustrating to like have to sort of out of necessity, like question the choices that we've made in the past, the choices that we will make moving forward to try to ensure our safety, the safety of our families, our children, you know, etc. And I see a lot of fear, a lot of frustration, and then also regret, I think. And it's just really, it's heartbreaking to have these conversations with people.
Thank you, Mina.
I am somewhat of an outlier here in that I don't do support groups usually. I very rarely do them. I don't do calls, again, very rarely. And I'll try to give my own experience a little bit. I was diagnosed in middle school, which is more than 20 years ago now, and it's formally diagnosed, I think. And I've known, you know, that I've talked about my entire life for it. I have sensory difference, learning difference of various types. And I think with the various like other diagnoses where I formally diagnosed with autism. But I needed the support I got in school. Needed it. If I hadn't gotten my support in school, I would probably still be in like ninth grade. Period. I would never graduated. And you know, if I been not saw a diagnosis or not, you know, been given support I needed or anything like that, I don't know what would have happened. And I don't really want to have to think about someone else not getting the support they need. And I've spoken to, you know, I spoke for years to elementary school students what it means to be autistic. There's more than one time where someone came back and said, you know, Aaron, one of my students found out they were students discovered their autism because they heard your speech. Like, that's amazing. Wow, they get support they need now. I want that to continue.
I think you make such a great point when you talk about
That's really important to say, Aaron, because like, you know, like all of us are talking about like, you know, the heartbreak that we see at work every day, and like, you know, that would be a true living example of it for sure. I also would hate to think about somebody literally having to forego the support that they need to you know, complete a milestone that, you know, every child in the US has been promised for sure.
If I did not have support I needed in school, I would probably be in, I don't know, 6th grade still at age 36. Exaggerating slightly, of course.
Yeah, I think that you bring up such a great point, and everybody has brought up that point. But there's this long-standing culture also in our community, in the advocacy community, around speaking out and talking about things and sharing your experience with other people and being vulnerable in hopes that it's helpful for somebody else. And this kind of rhetoric and this kind of conversation is directly antithetical to that culture. It basically says if you speak out, if you try to be vulnerable and talk about your experience, that information is going to be, you know, recorded and saved, and that, you know, you are going to be that's going to be used as a tool in aid for discrimination against people instead of the empowerment of people. And that's part of the reason why I think it's so deeply important to us as a community. So I want to thank you all for highlighting that. I think one client experience I'd like to highlight that I think was very impactful to me before we move into our next question was somebody said to me something along the lines of, you know, there have been a lot of conversations about like masking and about disclosure that have gone on and talking about how people should be more open and that people should share what their needs are and that people should talk about their experience. And they basically just point blank asked me, like, in spite of the things that are happening now, how do I mask better? How do I hide better? How do I keep myself safe from this? And to be asked that by a client for the first time in 4.5 years of working here, somebody saying, I want to hide better, I need to be safe, is such a harrowing kind of experience to have to deal with and to have to come up with an answer for that, to somebody's real concern. And I can only imagine how many other people are thinking the same thing. So again, I want to thank you all for your answers to that question and highlighting the experiences of the people in our community. My next question, and this has a bit of historical context as well as just kind of generally speaks to the more political nature of things. How does this look? This, not only the registry, but also just like the rhetoric and the approach to autism, the discussion of curing autism, the discussion of identifying a so-called cause of autism. Um, how does this resemble past patterns of control over disabled people?
Go. Like I said, it's just very medicalizing. There's a couple of different ways of looking at autism and about disability in general. I am disabled on multiple levels. I am both autistic and physically disabled. I deal with some chronic pain stuff. And with that, there is the medical model of disability saying that this is something that needs to be fixed, something needs to be cured. And then there is the social model of disability, which says this is not something that needs to be fixed, this is something that needs to be celebrated. And I want to bring us into that age. And it feels like with this administration, we're going far backwards. And it's going to impact a lot of people. This, like, with whatever iteration this registry takes, it's already impacting people, and we all need to be like aware of that and just keep fighting the good fight. Yeah.
Thank you, Emmett. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, on the subject of how does this resemble past like patterns, that's the single biggest thing to me, is that all of us here in the advocacy community, even if we, were diagnosed as adults, our thinking has changed dramatically over the years. Like Aaron, Ryan, Liv, I was diagnosed as a child 20 years ago now, and my thinking has evolved tremendously. There's been multiple stages of awareness and conception of what is autism, what is neurotypicality, what are these words. And I've, as someone who's been paying attention to the conversation basically for that whole time, I've seen the broader discourse change. I've seen the language change. I've seen ordinary people's attitudes about what is a human being, what is an adult, change in that amount of time. And a lot of our clients are coming to this language for the very first time, but I mean, a lot of it 10 years, 15 years ago, like I had the same aha moment that they're having now in 2025. And so seeing this whole RFK thing, it's a time capsule. Like it's just out of date. The script of like what is autism that he's working with is like 20 to 40 years out of date. It's just not something he or his team ever engaged with in any meaningful way about like what is the truth of the human condition, what is the truth of this experience. And while that isn't surprising, it's deeply frustrating that he is now the voice of public health in the United States at this moment. It's strange and sad and ridiculous, and at the same time, the surge in voices pointing out, hey, these things are not true, is very, very different than it would have been 20 to 40 years ago, for a whole host of reasons. That's encouraging, and something that gives me encouragement is that, as painful as this conversation, this national conversation is, I think it will give as many people as it will misinform. It will also inform a number of people as well. People who have not been paying attention to this conversation at all will suddenly hear different voices, will suddenly hear different counter perspectives that would not have been given media space 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So, but it's deeply frustrating, and above all else, unnecessary. It's unnecessary suffering for our community to be going through this episode right now.
Thank you, Bob. Mina, you can go ahead.
I think thinking about it from a historical context for a lot of us is like where that this like fear of having a registry is coming from. If we look at, you know, past regimes that were like largely based on control, purity, and productivity, the most marginalized among us are frequently the first ones on the chopping block, metaphorically and unfortunately sometimes literally. So I think looking at it from a historical context, you know, a lot of the times these sort of like really scary moments in history began with these people in power targeting disabled people and queer people. And I think it's unfortunately because we live in societies where ableism and homophobia and transphobia are like generally still pretty accepted forms of discrimination. And I think I would be, in my personal opinion, like I would be remiss not to think about those things and the context of how all of this is sort of like mirroring sort of like a playbook almost that these types of wow, I can't think of the word, like governments and entities have sort of like gone about picking people off in the past. I think specifically in the United States, at least, we're so hyper focused on productivity, and that like productivity is inherently linked to worth and, you know, these other sort of like belief systems that we have. And so if your notion of disabled people is that they are less productive, you know, things like RFK has said, like they will never play in a baseball game, they'll never get married, they'll never have a job, you know, all of these things are like these societal markers that we have for success and worthiness in society. So I think that, as scary as it is even for me to like say this out loud, I think the historical context is pretty clear that this is, you know, disabled people like ourselves are frequently, you know, the first people to sort of be a part of these like social cleansing maybe kind of experiments. Like how do we ensure that we have, you know, the most productive, the most pure, all of these kind of like buzzwords societies. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately, ableism is still pretty accepted in as a form of discrimination in society. So people are more likely to overlook it when it's happening to us. And I think these are all just things I'm hyper aware of as we see more and more information coming out of the White House. And I know the people in my support group are also very aware of this context. And I think it has immediate impacts in, you know, the sense of mental health and just like fear and concerns around safety, but it also has in the past been indicative of worse things to come. So I think there's a lot of historical context to consider when we talk about things like this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, Liv.
Mina, you touched on a lot of the stuff that I was concerned about as well, so thank you for putting that so eloquently. And another thing that I just wanted to mention about, like, you know, folks that, or not folks, but organizations that usually compile lists such as these will end up making blanket statements about the population that it has listed out in a very, what's the right word I'm looking for? too broad to actually benefit the entire list that they've compiled. Organizations that still exist today in the U.S. Have had histories of, you know, claiming to speak for all autistic people and you know, saying some pretty nasty things about us that ended up not being super true, or, you know, more charitably sometimes just not applicable to us all, which is still unhelpful at its best. And you know, can cause widespread misinformation at its worst that you know, leads to a lot of the stuff that we've discussed already, including like employment discrimination and then some. You know, I want to say this directly after what Mina said, because, you know, it's, you know, past regimes that have used ableism to enact oppression, as well as current organizations that perpetuate similar things that cause our population, not our population, our community to, you know, continue to have unnecessary hardship.
Thank you, Liv.
Can I dive in now?
Yes.
Okay. So what about this covers some of you already covered some parts of this, but look, I was gonna say, geez. Okay, look, about productivity. You're mute some of productivity, live some little productivity. Look, it's gonna be decades to learn how to be productive. Literal decades. That's why one of the reasons I had so much trouble in school. I couldn't deal with being productive for a whole day. You know, I do it now. I guess I must be able to. I'm working full time. Well, not quite full time, but you get the idea. But you know, it took me decades to learn how to do that. If I hadn't gotten sport ID in middle and high school, I would probably still be in middle and high school. First of all, and say I wouldn't be able to work now. Period. And if it's something like this, would make life impossible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you're also touching on the
Yeah, but I'm
fact.
speaking from my own experience here. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense to speak on that experience because, like, I think you've also brought up the point that even in a society that values productivity so heavily, we have structures in place currently that help people to become productive, which people still have inherent worth, even if they're not productive. But we do have structures in place that help people to become productive, that help people to participate in society. And the rhetoric that is going on right now is preventing people from participating in society, is preventing people from accessing those structures that increase productivity. So in a lot of ways, RFK is actually not accomplishing his own goal by doing a lot of this stuff. And that kind of leads me to the last question that I want to ask the group today, which is a lot of the rhetoric that he's been using in other situations, like regarding other issues, has been like, how do we support families? How do we support groups of people? Like, you know, he's trying to do the whole, like, we're family oriented, we want to help, you know, we want to like reinstate the family unit, and we want to help the smaller people in society. And so how is this rhetoric about autistic people and disabled people at large, how is this rhetoric and these policies going to be antithetical to that goal?
I'll start. I just want to say, like, your autistic kid is amazing. Your autistic adult, like, human is amazing. Support them and not let all this go on. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you. Liv, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've one of the research studies that I helped to author was around this concept of a positivity model of learning and bettering yourself versus a deficit model. And what that means is, you know, if you tell anybody, they don't have to be autistic, but if you tell anybody, you know, how they need to improve on, you know, whatever task is at hand, you know, like, yeah, that could be done, but if you were to instead tell somebody how good they are at something and like encourage them to like follow that much, then it turns out that their success with the task at hand it becomes a lot more easy to obtain. And that makes sense to all of us, right? Like if you're told like, hey, like you're doing a great job and like here are the ways that you can continue, that's a lot more encouraging than, hey, I noticed these flaws, you should work on that. So for especially for our autistic population, if we're being told everything like they'll never go to a baseball game, or they'll never play baseball, they'll never like enjoy these things, they'll never like drive a car, it's like man, like how discouraging is that to whatever percentage of the population of the US that we are. Like that's it's despicable to put the the onus of success on somebody who it faces typically more challenges than folks without autism do. Um, and it just makes it more and more difficult. Like you said, Ryan, it's antithetical to his own goal of fixing things when he's actually being an entire detriment to our community for sure.
I think a lot of them are like really things that would benefit the supports that people could use are things that would benefit everyone, like not just disabled or autistic people. So like accessible healthcare is a big one. Financially accessible and, just from like a functioning sort of thought, I think that would be a huge support that people would really benefit from. I think continuing to support autistic people in schools, like Erin was talking about, and in the workplace, allowing for accommodations for people. I think accommodations and supports for people so they can, be the best version of themselves in whatever context that looks like. I think continuing the work that autistic advocates have done for years of, doing, education outside the community, letting people sort of like understand, the different presentations of autism, like safety and security training so that autistic people are not more likely to be, targeted by police. There's a lot of things that I think like in general, there's a lot of education and removal of barriers that would truly benefit everyone. It would just have a much more significant impact on a lot of autistic people. And I really see this administration doing the opposite of most of those things. And it feels incredibly disingenuous to watch some of these policies be put in place or discussed as something that might be put in place when, activists from all different walks of, specialty, be it like race, sexuality, gender, disability, who have been sort of platforming these ideas for years, and to act like maybe we don't know what we best need for ourselves is incredibly frustrating. So I think it would behoove them and everyone to listen to the people in these marginalized communities and understand what supports that we know that we need, and make forward progress on that rather than these sort of like arbitrary ideas around like curing autism or what have you, that no one is, I won't say no one, a large population of autistic people are completely uninterested in being cured, whatever that would look like, myself in particular. I would love health insurance. That would be rad. I would really like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mina.
I'm sorry to jump back in, but Mina, that was such a good point because it speaks to the point Emmett was making earlier about being infantilized. We're being told that we don't know what's best for us, and like we are whole adults, and our community includes very competent, young people as well who will grow up to be adults. And wouldn't it be great if we had the autonomy to decide what is best for us and our community, for sure.
Absolutely. Do we have any final thoughts here before we want to wrap up? All right. Well, at this time, I just want to say thank you all for being so candid and really talking about the experience you've had yourself and with your clients. Our aim in creating this video is to raise some awareness about how this conversation has affected our community and has affected our daily lives. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.